I need that for after.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order at 10 o'clock. I'll ask the clerk if anyone is participating electronically.
Not as of yet.
You. And I need a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda. So moved by Councillor Tiber, seconded by Councillor Gardner. Be it resolved that this meeting agenda dated Tuesday, July 28, 2026 be adopted. Questions, comments? All in favor? Carried. Anybody have a conflict of interest to declare? None? And brings us right to the reason we are here today. Good morning to our friends from BG2G. So we'll turn the meeting over to you at this point. And basically it is the council review of the first draft for the Mattawa official plan. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, members of council. Nice to see everyone. It's been a little while. Hope everyone's enjoying their summer. Just to refresh your memories, my name is Anthony Holmick, and I'm the manager of the planning team at JT2G and the senior planner. I'm joined by a planner on our team, Captain Curry, who's done the bulk of the heavy lifting on preparing this draft that's been presented to you, and that's been available to you. So, well, the credit for pulling this all together is entirely your Catherine. So I'm going to lead through a presentation that will be mostly verbal. I hope everybody's had the opportunity to review the draft or parts of the draft at least. I know it's not the most exciting document in the world, but it's an exciting milestone, I think, for the town of Mattawa, as we've discussed. It's been a long time coming, but it is a bit of a dry document, admittedly. So I hope everybody had the opportunity to take a look at it, read it in detail, or at least skim it. And I hope everybody's had the opportunity to perhaps take a look at some of the schedules that the company official plan, the Schedule A of the main land use map being the most important of those schedules, where we are looking at changing some of the land use designations in the town from what's in the existing official plan. To sort of keep up with provincial planning direction and contemporary planning practices. So we'll get into that a little bit further in the presentation. And then obviously we are here to invite your feedback and to hear any and all comments, questions, and concerns, with the goal of moving forward with bringing back, depending on, I guess, the scale of amendments or comments that council may have, certainly bringing a draft back to council as soon as possible. And hopefully inviting some comments from the public. We don't have anybody here, we don't have anybody online, but I don't know if maybe council has heard some comments from residents or spoken to residents about the new official plan project over the past couple of years. So hopefully we'll get some public feedback as well. And then perhaps at the end of the meeting, we can, or I don't know how we can do it, but we can gather around the plans if there are comments specific to the plans that any of you have comments on, and sort of take it from there. But we'll take good notes. Meeting's going to be recorded, so you can review any comments, so make sure we capture everything moving forward. So without further ado, I think I think we're here today with a little bit of an update and a bit of an apology as it relates to the time that it's taken to get this before you. But the reason why it's taken so long to get us to this point is you may be aware that the province has made a series of changes to the Planning Act over the last couple of years. The main one that delayed us was changes. The province was a standardized table of contents and standardized requirements for what is contained in an official plan for the province. So they proposed a one-size-fits-all table of contents and list of schedules that are required. So for example, the current Mattawa official plan, and a lot of smaller municipal official plans have 1 or 2 schedules. We now have to prepare 14 schedules of 16 schedules, 9. A lot of schedules, there's also sections that are required to be in the official plan that aren't necessarily relevant to the town of Mattawa, but it is what it is. So this legislation was tabled earlier in the year, didn't come to pass till, well, it was tabled last year, didn't come to pass till a couple of months ago, so we made the decision to delay the preparation of this draft, waiting for the changes that were coming from the province, so that we didn't have to redo the work. We didn't want to have to come back to council and say, okay, we've taken and we prepared this draft and now we got to redo it and have to ask for more money. So we thought it was the prudent decision was to just wait till we got the direction from the province to then finalize this draft for your consideration. What it means, however, is that this OP is not likely to be able to be adopted in this term of council. With respect to notification periods that the MMAH requires, notifications to hold public meetings, open house statutory public meeting, and then forwarding it on to the ministry. So that's just an unfortunate reality, in my opinion, of the delays that the province has caused us. Is that this is going to spill into the next term of council for final adoption. So maybe just to really quickly go through some of or just to list out to you the required chapters in the official plan. Some of the chapters at the beginning don't necessarily change very much: introduction, purpose, organization. But the province has introduced the strategic planning framework. There's much more explicit requirements for Indigenous consultation than ever existed before. Now, certainly for good reason. There's a new section for settlement area structures, growth management, and growth management itself. The province has turned some of the land use, the more traditional land use planning designations on their head a little bit. You think, typically in the past you had your residential, commercial, industrial, institutional. The province is really pushing to a much more mix of uses, and there's a less rigid separation of those uses that we used to have, which I think is a good thing. Makes things more flexible. Is much more supportive of growth, in my opinion. There are specific policy areas now for economic development. There's a movement towards more of an agricultural system, which doesn't actually apply to the state of Mattawa. Agri-food networks, and there have been some changes with respect to just the way the plans have to speak to resource management, parks and open spaces, and natural and man-made hazards. We do have a copy if anybody wants to review these changes to the Planning Act, but it's quite a change from the way we would have previously approached a new official plan for a municipality like that. So I just wanted to bring council to a number of key areas that we think are key areas that we would like council to give specific thought to or provide some specific direction on. If you haven't already had some thoughts in this regard. We have updated the objectives from the official plan, or updated the objectives that were in the existing official plan. We've carried forward a lot of those goals and objectives from 25 years ago, 30 years ago are still very relevant today. However, we have added some new objectives. We've also broken the objectives down into sort of the 3-pillar approach of economic, social, and environmental, and just sort of general growth objectives. We've done our best to prepare a town profile, and we hope that meets expectations. But if there's anyone who wants to take it upon themselves to provide us with more background, more history, if we want to beef that section up, we're more than happy to do that. I'd like to mention, as I mentioned a couple of seconds ago, the new requirements for much more robust Indigenous engagement. One of the biggest components of this is archaeological assessments. So you will see in the official plan that we are We are likely going to be requiring more archaeological assessments with development applications moving forward. There are significant efforts in the new official plan to promote housing and to provide flexible housing policies and increase of housing affordability. We, for the most part, allowing more supply, allowing additional residential units, garden suites, up to 3 units on full service properties without any need to amend the plan, and that will be reflected as well in the zoning bylaw amendment. So there's a big push, and I'm sure you all know from the province, big push to provide housing everywhere, because we know we need housing everywhere. Particularly, we've heard from yourselves, things like we need places for our younger adults to live. We need places so that people can stay here and raise a family here. They don't have to leave. So I think there's a lot of policy in here that's flexible with respect to hopefully unlocking some more development for housing. There's discussion and we've separated out Airbnbs versus traditional B&Bs. So something to turn your minds to. We've effectively, we're not doing anything with respect to regulating Airbnbs, but there's policy language in the official plan that gives council permission to do that if they choose to. With respect to environmental protection, there's certainly a lot more to that than there was 25, 30 years ago. The original, or the most recent official plan for the town of Ottawa was passed before the Endangered Species Act became a thing. So there are similar to our archaeological assessments, there will likely be a lot more need for environmental impact studies moving forward with development applications. And this is, I mean, we heard from yourselves, we heard from some members of the public that it's important to protect the natural environment. That's something that makes Madawa a very unique place and a place that people want to be. So recognizing the importance of the rivers and the natural environment, I think there is an importance to producing those environmental impact studies as it relates to development applications. Floodplain. There's already floodplain. We all know about the increased severity of storms and flooding events in the town of Ottawa and the province as a whole. So there's some more stringent language with respect to floodplain, flood fringe, flood proofing, where you're allowed to build, what you have to do to build in those locations in the new official plan. With respect to, as I mentioned, or as I hinted at, changes to land use designations, we are, and this was something too that came out of the interviews from yourselves, we have introduced sort of what we call more Main Street policies for the main commercial strip, where we are looking at, we're suggesting that ground floor residential is not permitted or not promoted on the main street. We would like to see that. I think we heard from yourselves that you want to see that continue as the main commercial strip with a walkable strip where people can do a lot of their daily business on the main strip. And we don't want to lose that function by allowing residential uses at the ground floor. That really does interrupt that sort of traditional main street feel. So that's something for council to consider as a whole. Something else we would like feedback from council on is with respect to highway commercial. So we have designated it all highway commercial along the highway.
Yes, so right now, all along the highway as well as Main Street is in the, it's called a mixed use areas designation. It replaces what we typically would have counted as a commercial. So unfortunately, where we used to maybe identify downtown commercial, highway commercial, it's now kind of been grouped together. So we've specified out policies for the downtown about that residential. What we'd like input from you on is how you feel about residential on the highway main strip. I mean, obviously there is a lot of existing residential, and kind of we'd like some direction as to whether you'd like to permit residential on a case-by-case basis or not permit any new residential. I mean, obviously the existing would count as legal, non-conforming. But going forward, what direction you'd like to present future residential.
And that's sort of the 30-year vision is, does council for the town want to see Highway 17 continue as this mix of commercial residential uses? Because we can certainly permit that, we can certainly foster that, but if council wants to see that primarily commercial or primarily residential, that's the direction we're looking for from you. Thank you, Catherine. There is specific language in the official plan with respect to the two municipal land bank projects. To unblock that, to have that described very explicitly to the province, what we're trying to accomplish with both of those, in particular land bank number one, that we're trying to advance as the priority and as the focus for pretty well, the major focus for new growth within the town. So that we hope will be well received by the province. Naturally, with Highway 17 running through the town, there's policies with respect to MTO and pre-consultation with the MTO with respect to any development applications that are within MTO jurisdiction and just in close proximity to the highway. Getting to the end of this sort of key areas, we have introduced some what we think are somewhat more flexible land division policies. And I think it's important to highlight here that once we have the new official plan in place, the town will be the approval authority for plans of subdivision and consent applications that are right now having to go to the province for approval. So if you want to do the severance, that has to go to the province to Sudbury for the approval, whereas in the future, the town will be able to use this cumulative adjustment for both minor variances and consents, and then staff that will be delegated the authority to approve plans of subdivision, which is great, I think. You guys are able to control your own domain rather than having to rely on the province as we have in the past. We've introduced severance policies that would, as I said, are flexible with language that speaks to I think we've used 3 lots. I know we don't see a whole lot of severance activity, but we want to be as flexible as possible. That we've introduced language to say, generally speaking, in general, no more than 3 lots at a time by way of consent. Anything more than that should go by way of plan of subdivision, but we've used flexible language there with shoulds and general, so that it can be all considered on a case by case basis. There's no severance history within the town of Mattawa, albeit an urban area, so there's no, you may be familiar with other locations, you may have heard of other locations where you're only able to sever 2 or 3 or 5 from an existing parcel of land. Less relevant in an urban center like Mattawa, but we believe we've introduced some very flexible land division policies. With respect to policies that you may be wondering, why are there aggregates in here? Why is the agriculture in here? Why are the provincially significant wetlands in here? That comes back to all these requirements from the province that the plan has to have, whether or not it's applicable. And then I think maybe I should have led with this, but I think it's important to understand that a lot of this language is coming directly from the province. A lot of the inputs in here is directly from the province. When you see things with respect to required areas of influence from industry or areas of influence from environmentally sensitive areas, a lot of those are established by the Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of Natural Resources. And when we started this project, we had our pre-consultation meeting with the province through the MMAH. They do their one window planning process, and they circulated the kickoff of this project to their 14 different ministries, if not more. They provide all their feedback. They say, here are the policies that we want you to put in the plan. So that is that's a big part of where we started is filing all of this information to the various ministries. We have gone through and we've added flexibility throughout. We've attempted to be flexible where we think there's flexibility. On some of the policies that come from the province, there is simply no flexibility. But the council should be aware that a lot of the language in here is directly from the province. And I think we mentioned in a previous meeting that there's a lot of language in here as well that's been informed from some of our other more recent official plan amendments that we've done as a firm. We've mentioned South Algonquin, who's also the district of the same, and also has had to go through North Bay Ministry of Municipal Affairs for its approval as a fairly good example for language that they made us change. Put it that way. So I think those are the key areas for discussion that if you haven't focused in on those, I think those are some of the areas that we asked you to maybe give a second read to. With respect to where we go from here, as mentioned, obviously a key theme throughout all new official plans is the Indigenous consultation. So I think once we receive your feedback and we've prepared another draft of this plan, or if you direct with the Senate now, we need to get this plan into our local Indigenous communities. And we have attempted to make some communications with some of them through Mr. LaPerriere. We've made some communications, we've made some attempts. We haven't heard any feedback other than through the AOO, who JB2G has a very good relationship with and has for many years. So we have spoken with the AOO. So we will, as part of the approval process, we do need to prove to the province that we have done our best efforts to engage local Indigenous communities. So that's a crucial next step, is having them review the plan, providing input and comment that we then package up into our submission once council adopts it to the province. So then with respect to,
If I can,
yeah,
that's an important one, and it's something that the town of Mattawa has been proactive already. Okay, so I think we're ahead of the curve. The problem was we had no documentation in our official plan. Okay, so, and the other thing that forces you, anytime you're out to get some funding, you know, for various projects, if you don't have consultation, you don't have funding. Okay, so I'm glad that's now included.
yes,
And I think the two projects we have on the go right now, there's been excellent communication with First Nation groups, and you know, we're hoping to keep going on future endeavors also.
yeah,
Sorry about in, but
no,
important one.
great feedback. I appreciate that as well. Yes, I haven't been directly involved or as directly involved in a couple of those projects, but those projects that you mentioned. But yes, I do. I am aware from Mr. Hunter that Indigenous engagement seems to be going quite well. And we hope that the inclusion of the policies and direction, and certainly that practice at reconciliation that is now contained in this plan is simply the right thing to do. So I think that's going to set the stage for the future and for future development of the town. Will certainly make the process more defined, but will also, I think, result in more meaningful consultation with Indigenous partners. With respect to the timeline, where we go from here, the next step will be to hold a public open house. Once we have a draft that, let's say our next draft or a draft that we feel should be going out to the public, we'll hold an open house. And before we hold that open house, we have to give the Ministry of Municipal Affairs 90 days notice. That's the requirement of the Planning Act. Unfortunately, we have to give them a tremendous amount of notice before we have that open house. Once we do hold that open house, and we can hold multiple open houses, if we want to hold it one during the day, one at night, we can certainly do that. We can hold as many open houses or just one open house. So once we've completed the open house process, then we would move on to the statutory public meeting, for which we have to give 20 days notice. And then that just has to take place more than a week after the last open house. And at that point, at that statutory public meeting, which I would anticipate now is probably, I guess, November. I'm not 100% sure when the new council meeting or the first council meeting would be to swear the new council in. So that statutory public meeting to adopt the new official plan, I anticipate would probably be a December, maybe a January, depending on how the council process goes. Because I know that first council meeting is typically the swearing in. There's not a whole lot of new business on that meeting, so we can certainly discuss that in the future. But I think we're probably looking late in the year, maybe early new year for that adoption of the plan incorporated onto the province. And that, I think we'd invite any and all comments, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you.
Anybody? Councillor Ross?
So definitely like the idea of commercial staying commercial on Main Street, residential up top. Is fine, and we have some in existence that are on the main, which would have to stay, they'd be grandfathered in, but for sure. I also like the comments here about helping with flood areas, flood zones, because we have that happening right now with some of our residents, so that's good, we can look at that, so. Yeah, no, I like everything that's in here so far.
Thank you.
Councillor Levite?
You're talking about a whole year from now for this documentation being rectified and got forward for approval before it goes to the province.
Yeah. No,
Your presentation of what you were saying, the changes from the province. You have a documentation of what they sent you? Why these of all these changes? And can corporation get a copy of that so we can do a comparison ourselves on the versus what you indicated? I know you talked a lot about it, but we don't absorb it and split second in our mind, so we need to have something that we can follow up on it, and so their CEO, I know you're gonna inform him some stuff, but.
What's the name of that document? I'm sorry,
yeah,
provincial,
there's the provincial plan, there's the planning act.
Yeah. but the document that came out in.
The provincial planning statement.
Yes, okay, so it is out there,
Yeah.
and that's what was amended, and we all did receive a copy of that. I just wanted to bring that.
Okay, well, that's funny.
But I think there's maybe another little part of that question there, so the province amended the planning act, not the provincial planning statement, so the provincial planning statement was issued in 2024, but as Mr. Mayor has mentioned, that, I know we've shared that several times, I'm sure the mayor and staff have shared that. So that impacted, or that impacts the preparation of this plan, because every official plan has to be consistent with the provincial planning statement. But what the major, so that didn't actually change anything in the process of our preparation of this plan. What it was the changes to the planning act that changed the required contents of the plan. And I know that's a little bit nuanced, but we can certainly prepare, maybe we can put together a little memo that speaks to those changes, if that would be helpful. With respect to sort of, we can do a bit of a compare as to, maybe we could do even like a table of content compare or contents, something. I don't want to make it too detailed and too in the weeds, but I think we can put something together for you on that request if please council.
Okay, my number 2 is your indigenous information for, are you going to be sending a package like this to them to review? You haven't done that yet, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so is that how far down the road or when you're gonna do it, when it's completed?
I think we would welcome council direction on that. I mean, we can send it to our Indigenous partners right now. I think we wanted to present the first draft to council.
Oh, I understand that part, yeah.
Yes, so we can send it to the Indigenous partners right away. We can send them this exact same draft so that everybody's looking at the same thing. Or we can work through any edits the council may have first and then send it back to council as well as to our Indigenous community. I think we're in your hands on that one.
Okay, and on your highway and Main Street, commercial part, are you be mixed for residential and commercial? I think the highway corridor, which is already pre-existing residents on there. I don't think we have any land availability for commercial there, except maybe for one lot. But on Main Street, though, the most important part is, I know that they're not really claused in for apartments on Main Street where they close a business and they made an apartment of it. I would like to see some type of recognition or guidance that maybe it might be our policy, Paul, that we have to change if we're not gonna allow. Somebody moves out and they need to find a place to stay, that has to stay commercial. Because if we're gonna allow this here, we're gonna have just residential, limited commercial on Main Street. So this is
Right.
very important.
Right, and so that is the there is very clear direction we've put in the plan, which is that ground floor residential is not permitted on Main Street.
Yeah, that's all I have for you.
And just to confirm there, your sense is to leave the highway more or less as is with that mix of both?
We got no place for commercial other than private property that's on the other side of the railroad track and that, and he's already got plans. That he's going to build a motel and some housing in there.
Yeah.
So that's what obviously he's gonna be approaching the municipality for
Right.
a zoning or whatever it is required, so.
Thank you.
I personally like the mixed designation because it gives us leeway.
Yep.
You know, but I totally agree with the sentiment that the ground floor should be
Yeah.
commercial and.
Yeah.
Cause that's the way it was.
Mhm.
And when these buildings or businesses were in trouble, they approached council of the day and council modified their plan. Put in an amendment and permitted residential units. So how do you back that out? You have to respect legal non-conforming,
100%.
you know, like. If there's a sale or something, that's where you can step in and make sure that it's fixed up. According to what we'd like to see, and what council of the day would like to see in their official plan.
So that could be a condition that I'm sailing.
We need an official plan that
No,
would state
I know.
that first.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what makes a downtown Main Street a downtown Main Street.
Main Street,
Yes. So I think that's something that's very important.
So what I'm trying to say, it's not, we're gonna sit here and evict,
No,
you know, change it, so. If something does happen, we can bring it back to acceptable standards, council would have that option.
and the plan moving forward would suggest to those folks that have converted through in the past, converted their ground floor to residential, the direction that the town is going to provide to everybody is that even though it is commercial or residential now, that in the future, we certainly we're gonna recognize that they have legal standing to be there, legal non-conforming status to be there, so to use, but that the vision is that the ground floors go back to commercial.
Commercial,
something in the
yeah.
future, to foster that
Mhm.
that vitality of Main Street.
Any more questions, councilor?
Nope.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Gardner.
And I have some written down here and bear with me, my first time going through an official plan, so. I tried to compare some of the ones around us that I've seen, some are very old, some are newer, but. There's just a couple of nitpicking ones on the first few pages that I had. It says in there that we
You
are.
give the page.
Yeah, page 11, it says that we're home to Samuel de Champlain Provincial Park and the Canadian Ecology Center. We're not technically home to, we're in the area of, but technically they reside in Calvin Township, I believe. So just, you know, I think it is, when people think of those places, they think of Mattawa, but technically it's not.
Good catch.
In our township, or our town, sorry, page 13, there was. Talk of the provision of active transportation opportunities such as the Ottawa Valley Recreational Trail and the Voyager multi-use trail system, and that was in regards to. I believe we were talking about consultation with our Aboriginal
The Algonquins.
yeah, with the Algonquins. I believe it might have actually specified. I'm just flipping back to the page 13.
Number 3.
Anyways, my kind of comment there was like the town of Mattawa doesn't operate these organizations, and they have their own bylaws and stuff. So like, can we as the town say that the Algonquins or any Aboriginal group are gonna have any say into how things are like it says that the Algonquin will provide stewardship for those systems. It's like, we don't have anything to do with the VMUT systems. It's not even in Mattawa. Like, there's not a single VMUT trail within the town of Mattawa. They're all in Papineau Cameron or Matawan. Everybody thinks of VMUTs as Mattawa because again, we're the hub to the area, but we technically don't have any VMUTs trail systems within the town of Mattawa. So that was just like, thought, you know. Can we say that the Algonquins, I would love to think that they would include the Algonquins in those conversations, but I don't know if the town can say that they will, because those are separate groups. Separate from the town of Ottawa.
Appreciate that. I think, yeah, we can certainly look at that policy and figure out how we can change the language there, modify the language, and maybe this
Like,
encourage.
yeah, maybe exactly, the town of Ottawa encourages them to, yeah.
Town of Ottawa
exactly.
supports.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought. I had page 16. And again, this has been kind of talked about, the encourage all forms of residential intensification, including the development and redevelopment of underutilized commercial and institutional sites within the town of Ottawa where there is sufficient or existing planned infrastructure capacity. It just, when I read that, it brings my mind to think that if something is underutilized as a commercial space, that we're okay with it becoming residential, and I just want to make sure that that's not what we're trying to see. Obviously, it's been talked about that we don't want to see commercial spaces on Main Street become residential. And I don't think we want to see commercial spaces on you know, a lot of our highway corridor in town turn into residential. So that was just my thoughts on that one.
Okay, we can certainly look at that.
And then page 19. There's a spot in there that talks about the medium and high density residential farms will be encouraged within walking distance 750 meters of the downtown and in areas nearby parkland and other existing high density residential uses. And I just wanted to make sure that, like, we're thinking that we're taking our Dorion plan into consideration, and we're not planning to have any high density areas in that, because that is more than 750 meters from town. And I get that it says that we encourage it, but it's just, it would seem kind of silly that if we're saying in one plan that we encourage it, and then we put out another plan that says we want high density in this area, and we're like, well, we literally just did this. So that was, I just wanted to flag that I'm not sure. It's been a while since I looked at that Dorion plan, so I'm not sure if we have any medium or high density planning on Dorion.
There is some more medium density.
Okay.
That I think there's a little bit of row house, townhouse type stuff, but the current plan doesn't include any apartment buildings or anything like that. They don't necessarily want the higher end of medium and higher density uses.
Okay. And then some of these points, just, they may or may not even be relevant to the official plan. Like I said, this is my first go. I just kind of read some of the other ones around us and these things, and I thought maybe that we should. So I read one plan that talked a lot about the downtown revitalization. And the part of that was including limiting the main floor apartments. But it was also talking about encouraging storefront improvements and age appropriate restoration. So we have a lot of historic buildings on Main Street, and I think that was a key point, was age appropriate restoration might be something that we want to encourage.
I like that term.
A lot of other ones that had waterfront talked about waterfront, and we talked a little bit about it, but not really a whole lot about our waterfront. So I know that something was brought to council by another councillor in this term that talked about the potential for developing our waterfront area to include things like on the water homes and stuff like that. And then while that might seem a little out in the distance now, but it may be worth something to talk about if council was interested, because that was something that was brought up in this term of council. Another one that I read included talk about where the town would allow for electric vehicle charging, gas stations and hydrogen stations. And I didn't know if we kind of just say that that's allowed in commercial anywhere, or if there's like specific areas that we want to designate to those things. Because obviously I've seen the impacts in town where years ago they had a gas station, there was issues with the land, and now that has saturated into residential, which is next door. So just, I thought maybe that would be something to think about.
Do you know off the top of your head or in your notes what municipalities that was?
I didn't make a note on it. I can get it to you though, I can find out.
Sure. Or we'll do some digging too, but if you
Okay.
can find it faster,
Yeah.
that's, but that sounds like that could be some interesting policy to include this.
Yeah.
to those. It's certainly, I guess what we'll call alternative fuels, right, and where things are probably going.
It's coming, like
Yeah.
that's, I'm just thinking like, we're thinking the next 30 years, right, so.
Exactly.
I had one that talked about urban forestry and the replacement of mature and landscape trees that we have in public spaces, parks, and large residential complexes. So like I think of, we own right now Rosemount Valley Suites, but say there was 10 large trees on that property that provide shade and everything like that, and those fall down, well, they should be replaced. You know, if it was privately owned, so I thought that was kind of interesting, because you don't want to be, you know, I think natural beauty is a lot of what we have around us, so I don't want us to start to look like a city, you know, in our main corridors and stuff like that, so.
And that was, you were thinking, or that policy you're referencing was suggesting that private property owners need to replace, or?
This one, I think, and I wrote it down how they, so it was in parks, public spaces, and large residential complexes.
Okay.
So I don't think they're talking specifically about residential, like a single house or
Oh,
something
yeah.
like that. I think it was more like if somebody owns a 30-unit apartment building, well, maybe we should make sure that they're, you know, keeping with that kind of theme.
Mhm.
I just thought it was interesting. Again, it's not
Yeah,
something I'm gonna die on, but I read it and I was like, oh, that makes sense.
we can certainly look into that, and I'm sure you, the sort of sidebar there, I'm sure you noticed that we do have quite a lot of policy language in here. Speaking to the continued improvement and the continued care for places like Explorers Point and the other public assets within the town that we, you know, we obviously want to see continue to flourish.
I don't know if I'm dreaming, but I'm sure I read in here even on residential places. That if a person wants to get rid of a tree, you need council's permission. I read this in here. Like, and then, like, yeah, I did, I said, I've never heard of that before, you know, it's your tree.
We should probably,
Yeah,
Yeah, well-
and because Councillor Gardner brought that up, and so I read that and I had to read it a few times, Paul.
Yeah, so just maybe a different slant on that, because I'm a resident of North Bay. The city of North Bay has a bylaw that says you can't cut trees without the city's permission. It's different than going to council. But the bylaw would only be possible if the official plan says that you could have such a bylaw. And I think for the town of Mattawa, that was one of my notes, is I think we should have that.
okay,
We don't want this to be, you know, look like cement down all over, not a single tree anywhere. I mean, trees fall down, you gotta remove them, but just knock them down, just to knock them. I think, you know, from an official plan, we might say, if you wanna cut down your trees in your property, then, you know, then go to town hall and, you know, have it approved first,
yeah,
something like that.
no, that's something.
If I'm not mistaken, when Mayor Wilson was here, I was on her council for 2 terms. And she had a thing done with her court administrator, telling them that if they need to cut a big pine, they're to be saved. Unless there's a potential of danger or they're rotten or whatever. So if you check back there, I'm pretty sure that Wayne Belter, when he was here, he had put something in. Pretty sure.
We can certainly, as it relates to the official plan, we can put that enabling language in if council was to. Choose to amend or update or pass a tree protection bylaw, but as Paul was saying, a lot of larger, more urban municipalities do have tree protection, tree removal bylaws. Where, like I guess in North Bay, so you make the application to the municipality. If the municipality denies you, you can appeal that decision to council, or council can choose to allow you to remove it, but yeah, typically through the course of that application. You will need to justify why you're seeking to remove it, and typically there's replanting requirements, so if you're gonna remove. Typically, it's a 3-to-1 replacement, so if you're gonna cut down a large mature tree on your property, you need to plant 3 replacement trees on your property. Some places allow you to pay cash in lieu to the municipality, they can take that money and plant trees on municipal property. And typically, those bylaws would also have a requirement or a size threshold rather, so it would be that all trees over 30 centimeters at breast height need a permit. Anything below that can be removed, so just things to think about, but yes, if council's interested in the enabling language to have a tree protection bylaw, we can sort of put that in.
I also think we should consider a neighbor calling on another neighbor if the tree is on the on the property line, or if it's like would be falling on the other property or something like that, then some type of language around that as well.
Back to your list.
No, that's okay.
No, that was a good discussion.
Okay, I had, like, so in a lot of our plans, and this may be in there, to be honest, you read through close to 100 pages and you kind of lose track of what you've retained, but, like plan monitoring. So like, in a lot of our plans we've developed recently for the town, we have like a mechanism in there that we review it every so often. Like, and I know that this is kind of the plan for the next 30, I believe, 30 years, is that what?
That's sort of your typical planning horizon.
Yeah, so like, do we have anything in there that says, you know, like every 5 years we look at this, or every 10 years we look at this, or is it just kind of left up to the councils of the day to kind of what I'm getting at is that we have one now that's 35 years old. And because at no point did it say you have to look at it, it hasn't been looked at.
It does.
There is a plan, 5 years, I think the government says.
The planning act actually does
Yes.
say
Yeah.
every 5.
Okay, my planning access
The
that.
planning act says that, and I believe it's somewhere in the, maybe towards the end of the plan where you might have been running out of steam. But this is gonna be a new plan, so a new plan is 10 years.
Yeah.
So you mandatory review after 10 years and then 5 years after that, every 5 years thereafter.
Okay.
Council can direct, or council can move a motion to direct the review anytime.
No,
You know,
that's,
if council wanted to do it after 1 year or 2 years. You could, but this will give you, the planning act allows it to go 10 years and then it's 5 after that, and then after you do updates, it's 10 for a new plan, 5 for an update. And that said, I think it's worth mentioning that as it relates to monitoring. Typically what ends up happening through the course of a new official plan or even a new zoning bylaw amendment is, you know, we'd have a check-in, or we'd be regularly discussing with staff, but we'd probably have a check-in of sorts after about a year to see if there were any errors
Issues.
or issues or anything like that that needs immediate attention. Often you may have heard the term for bylaws, in particular, a housekeeping amendment.
Mhm.
So often you'll pass a big planning document, there might be some typos, there might be some missed references, that one section references the wrong section earlier in the document, those sorts of things. But also if there happen to be a whole bunch of official plan amendments or issues with developers, those sorts of things that were causing issues, you know, we could look at those things much sooner than the 10 years.
I have a few more here.
Yeah.
The talk about the commercial versus residential Highway 17 corridor, so. Was it, sorry, and maybe I misunderstood it, but is it the idea that those would become one mixed use designation, like they would all become in the same category?
Yeah, so the way I've structured it right now to present it to council is that we have designated it as mixed use areas, which would allow residential uses existing and in future. If there was a desire by council to not allow future residential, there's a next, I'll call it like the next designation up, that's called a mixed use commercial area, which allows everything but sensitive land uses, which would be your residential.
Okay,
So,
so once this plan kind of all comes out, like right now, would we change our tax rate categories to reflect new designations?
To the best of my knowledge, your impact assessed category is based on what the actual use of your property is, not the zone.
That's where you base your tax.
Because we have like residential, commercial, all those things, so somebody who is in that Highway 17 corridor who is residential and the next door neighbor is commercial, they would not be in the same tax ratio. That is kind of my worry. correct?
And you're right, like, you know, your hardware store is gonna be taxed commercial, if you've got a house right next door, they're gonna be taxed residential,
Okay.
even if the.
But they would be in the same classification on the, okay, that was just my worry there, I didn't want somebody who's has a house to be
pay
paid the same
commercial.
rate, I get the impact evaluation would be different, but I didn't want them to be paying the same rate as somebody who's operating a
Commercial.
15,000 square foot store, right?
Yes.
That's not fair, okay, and then the land bank severances, that were mentioned earlier. Limiting to 3, I believe you said. I know that that's almost non-existent, but again, I think of our hill and Doriano. And if we get to a plant, I think the intention now of council is to divide those lots
Divide.
ourselves, but say. A developer came in and said, I wanna take 30 acres up there and I want to sever that out into lots, build houses and stuff like that. I just don't wanna discourage any of those options. I don't wanna discourage options later on.
Right, and I think the intent is to proceed with a plan of subdivision for the entirety of the land bank. And then through the subdivision process, you've got a mechanism called part lot control. So you could, however, we end up bringing it to fruition, you could have a large, say, 30-acre block. That can be then very easily parceled out into smaller lots through the part lot control process. But I think to the point I was making earlier, we have, I think, used fairly soft language to say. Generally, it's 3 lots at a time by severance, but you know.
And you could always
So
amend.
they could take
Yeah.
a portion of that and make a subdivision,
Correct.
okay? So that means you might be looking at 25 homes or 30 homes, this individual will do. Then the rest of them still follows that they could happen again. Continuously,
Correct,
yeah.
exactly.
The last thing we wanna see is restriction.
I think what we've tried to do, we've tried to be as flexible and as open as possible for the land banks.
And the last one that I had was just, again, I'm finding it, some of it now, but it says in there specifically that we don't have septic systems. I read that somewhere, something along those lines.
I know we said that the majority of towns on.
That's
services.
okay, maybe that's what it was. I just, again, on the Dorial project, I believe, I don't know if that's changed, but there were some estate lots that were potential for septic and well.
Yeah, I think that's a correct.
And there is language in there for the
Yeah.
land bank to speak to, private services is permissible so long as hydrogeological assessment is done.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was, again, sorry, there's 100 pages, so I had time to go through
It's
it.
similar
Okay,
to Don.
that's all I had.
Donald Street, one side is Baton Rouge, the other side is town. Some don't water from the town, but they got their own set.
Good.
Thank you for all those comments.
I just have one actually, like, just, taking back off of the monitoring, how does the official plan measure success? Like, I know it's possibly more of a strategic planning, but like with the milestones and everything, I understand it's like a 10-year, you know, monitoring every 5 years. How does the official plan measure like the success of what we're trying to do?
It's a good philosophical question. I think. Maybe 2 parts to that. I think in the simplest sense, the plan would be a success if you don't have any amendments. If it's flexible, like I guess I'm trying to say, if it's flexible enough that nobody sees the need or nobody has to come forward with an amendment to foster development. And I think the second prong of that would be to see some renewed development, to see the land bank move forward, I think would all be part and parcel to the, and would be a function of the official plan, I think, to promote some of that.
All of
It
that
it is hard to measure,
I find, yeah, very generic.
yeah, but I think,
I don't think it's the purpose of the official plan to not only measure success, it's to lay down the foundation
yeah.
of what you can and can't do.
Mhm.
And what you can't do, you're
But
right.
it is important to note if it's working or not.
Like what population size would we deem actually success that the strategic plan can work around, like, and gear itself towards that? And what, I know that's also kind of broad term as well, because we don't know, but our population keeps going down, so if it goes up to a certain amount, what is success? Basically what we're looking at economic development, with like new businesses, like how are we gonna measure? Like the final plan of it, I guess.
Yeah, it is very difficult to measure, the plan being, as Mr. Mayor mentions, the plan is that framework, groundwork for how the town is to grow over the next 30 years. But there's a lot of good goals and objectives in there that we hope will foster some of that economic development, that growth that we're seeking to have come to Mattawa, and stay in Mattawa.
So the development up there with 123 homes, I think they were looking at, is that what do you do when somebody comes along and say, well, I want to put a store up there? Convenience store, because they don't have to drive downtown and you got that many people living up there.
Something we could look at in the zoning bylaw when it comes to pass, because the residential or the neighborhoods designation would permit small scale convenience retail. So it would permit a corner store up there through this designation. If council didn't want to see any business, any retail business up there, because a big portion of that land bank also is some light industry as well, right?
Okay.
So we wouldn't obviously don't preclude that. But if council was concerned about the potential impact of some retail up there, we could certainly, through the course of its own bylaw amendment, just not permit any retail there.
My last question, these residents up there.
Yeah.
A lot of them do home occupations. Okay, they take a garage, you make a little business out of it.
Yeah.
So is this gonna be controlled by this or is it gonna be controlled by the municipality?
Both.
Both?
So the official plan does give the flexibility for home-based businesses.
Okay.
I think as planners, we would see home-based businesses as a good thing. Depending on what they are, obviously you have to be able to function. Adequately with
Now,
neighbors.
that guy's gonna have a welding shop there and then you hear welding all night.
That's right.
That's,
Or a guy's got a hoist in his garage.
yeah, I'm just
Yes.
wondering, that's all.
No, and so a lot of that would end up being controlled by the zoning bylaw that implements the plan. But the provincial direction really, as I was saying earlier on, is that to move away from the really rigid separation of uses where 100 years ago it was, this is your industrial on this line.
Yeah.
This side of the line is industrial, this side of the residential is residential, and never the two shall mix. We're definitely moving away from that. We're trying this ignition that's one way we can promote growth, development, more housing is to remove some of those separation barriers. But certainly, yeah, we would look at the zoning bylaw in a residential zone. A welding shop would not fall under the definition of a home-based business or home industry.
All right.
Sorry, just the specific policy that we have in the official plan. It says that, home occupations may be permitted, accessory and residential uses, provided they're small in scale and compatible with residential uses. And then specific provisions related to home occupations shall be included in the zoning bylaw.
So a circulation of the residential around it would have to be given okay for this?
It would go through the zoning process, which has the 150
Perfect.
meter circulation.
So like your zoning bylaw would allow someone to run a massage studio in their house, would allow someone an accountant to have a tax office in their house. Those are very compatible uses, but it would
Yeah,
probably.
but that's not a nuisance business.
No,
No.
it would prohibit those nuisance businesses, and if somebody wanted to establish that, they'd have to file zoning bylaw amendment application. It would go to us.
Thank you.
Councillor Bigelow,
I'm open to it.
Mayor, any questions?
Well, I just said, if I can make a comment.
Absolutely.
I've been on this council for many years. And every session or every time that we have a new council, we're always saying, we better do our official plan. We have to do our official plan. This is 4 times now I've heard that. So I'm glad that this council and the last council have finally got it to this point. I'm so happy to see it, because you know what, when I make a decision at this table, it should be based on our official plan. Like I'm sitting up here making decisions and I don't even know if they fit even the old official plan, because it was in 1992 92 or 91 or something, you know, so. I mean, we're so far behind in our, so I'm glad to see this coming. The only problem I see in this whole thing is the lack of I'm trying to think of finalization maybe of the government, different government departments. Like, I know the 2008 study, Nipissing Housing Study, I used that 3 times in this community to build different things. So the provincial government comes out with new bylaws, new regulations, new policies. Then if they're pertaining to housing, it goes to the DSAB Nipissing District for their add it or subtract or add to their housing strategy. And then it filters down into the municipality. You know, if there was a process, I don't know if there is, and I don't know if it would include this, but to speed up that, you know, transition down to municipality where we can make a decision based on what their
Our needs are.
what their policies or whatever, you know what, it's happening so quickly, like, and they keep changing. So that by the time we get it, we're already started and then we have to change something because of the policy changes, you know. That's unfortunate. I don't think there's anything we could do, cause that's gonna happen forever, I'm sure. But I really like it. I really think it's important for us to develop our future, you know, and I'm really happy to see it even progress this far.
Thank
I'm sure a draft copy will be great coming soon. Thanks.
No, I appreciate that. I think just to touch on one of those points there, with respect to more power to you or more decision making to council is just the very fact that once this is in place, council will be able to, and committee of adjustment will be able to make more decisions.
Took the words out of my mouth.
More planning decisions are going to be in this room rather than in Sudbury.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Well, they're gonna, plan.
So I do think it's well done.
Yes.
I think it's important that we gain the authority to do so. You know, because just some of the roadblocks that personally I've encountered in discussions with the Land Bank One, you know, it's an obvious issue. And if we can, you know, have our own authority, which everyone around us has, as a matter of fact, you know, because we don't have an updated official plan, I guess we don't have it. Ministry is aware that we're seeking that, our MPP is aware we're seeking that, and I think this is excellent news. My second point is you're apologizing for being late, but
you're not.
I think it's a good thing. You know, because right now, what the government has done in this one, I don't agree with everything they do, but standardizing is only gonna help to make these reviews quicker. You know, you don't need a special team to look at this plan because it's out of this world and this plan is totally different.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a criteria to follow, so it's check the boxes, right? So I think that's gonna help us in the long run. We just gotta make sure that, you know, what we want included in the official plan is there, and you mentioned that it won't be done in this term. Maybe the next term of council will have some additions that, you know, they're looking at, so I think it was beneficial delay. I do have a few questions.
Of course.
Okay, first one's on page 18. Additional residential units. Then you got A, B, and C down there. Can you break it down for me? Because I'm trying to follow it and it's confusing.
It's very confusing, and the reason it's confusing is because it's directly from the planning act. So effectively,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Okay.
Say no more.
You said that.
The lawyers. So what it is what it means is that every piece of property that allows residential use is allowed to have, that is connected to municipal sewer and water, is by law allowed to have 3 residential units on their property. The ABC breaks it out saying If you have a single unit, residential unit, so single detached property, house on your property, you can have an additional one in the house and in an accessory structure, so say over a garage or a granny suite out back. If you have two in the house, you can have a third inside. And then the third is like, yeah, so if you have two in the house, you can have one outside. If you have two in the house, you can have one inside. If you have one in the house, one out of the house, you can have another in the house.
Oh, got
Okay.
it. Looks like a house situation.
It's saying the same thing 3 times over,
Yeah,
but that effectively says you can have three.
When you first started answering, you said you can have 3.
That's
Is that
all.
3 separate,
That's all.
is that 3 separate structures? Or they have to be a
It's,
combination?
it's two separate structures.
Up to two
Right.
separate, so you can have all 3 units in one house,
So you can have a triplex, if you will.
or you can have 2 units in one
In
building
and one outside.
in a smaller separate structure.
Like a garage converted.
Exactly.
Granny suite or something like that.
Yeah, so, right, so, say right now, you have the occupants of the house,
First
or
floor.
the house, that's one occupant. Then you rent out your basement. That's 2 occupants. The province has said you can have a third one now, but now the third one, you say, okay, I'll put them over top of my garage. That's your third occupant, so you can have 3. And it breaks it down as to where they can be.
Or you can have another floor to your house, put them up.
Yeah,
Upstairs.
So my question, because I live it, so I wasn't in a R1 zoning, which one building. I had to apply to the town for an R2, so I could get a second one, which
Yeah.
they're attached by a roof.
Yes.
The third one, if I, is that considered one building? Let's say I want to say, because I have a huge yard, I'd say I want a third one down in the back.
Yes. You can do that.
I can do that. That was the question. Okay.
Yeah.
And essentially, R1 zoning doesn't exist.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that, but it's just before we used to know how to do it, now we gotta relearn, right? Okay.
And, sorry, I just got.
Yeah, sure.
It's important to note that this will also find its way into an implementing zoning bylaw, and so we can be. Council can be as flexible as they like with that, I mean, some places. That are maybe a little bit more hesitant to go kind of carte blanche, 3 units per property. Have subordinate requirements, so say your principal unit is 1,000 square meters, then you could put a bylaw in that says that the accessory units can't be more than 80% of that or 70% of that if you want. So that there is still a principal dwelling effectively, and then 2 secondaries, that's kind of the way the legislation is written. But if council wanted to be even more flexible, you could just permit triplexes on every single piece of fully serviced land in town.
And let them decide if they want add-ons or not.
That's right, and it's not gonna change overnight, it's not as though everybody with a single is gonna build a triplex tomorrow,
Yeah.
but it would be that sort of 30-year. Giving the flexibility.
So
that
does
everybody
that
does.
apply to commercial on the bottom and then they push apartments on top?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
For ADUs is only residential, I think. We didn't believe so, it's just.
Yes, the wording of the planning act is that on a residential piece of land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not commercial.
Not
No.
commercial, okay.
Okay, yeah.
I know in the plan it talks about development of potential development of a tiny home area. Tiny homes on wheels, are those considered in the residential? Is that considered
A unit.
an accessory building on its own if we were to allow that on a property? Because
I think that would fall into the zoning.
Yeah, that would be up to the
And that's-
municipality, I think.
It's an interesting consideration we can have for the.
like if somebody has a house and their kid wants to build a tiny home in the backyard and they could, if it's on wheels, like I guess.
Typically, the only issue with that is connection to services.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting, so like it's on wheels, it's movable, but if it's connected, skirted and it's connected to services, water and sewer and stuff like that, well, now it's permanent, it's semi-permanent, right, like so. Is that something that we need a bylaw to designate, or is that something that gets kind of caught up in the official plan?
I think that actually gets caught in the nuance of a garden suite,
Okay,
because the official plan permits garden suites
yeah,
for a period of up to 21 years.
Yeah.
Which is your planning act threshold for needing consent is the 21 years less a day. So I think it's captured under the garden suites.
yeah, I heard that, okay.
But I think we could, council could
So
look
is
at.
that designates, need to be a foundation underneath that, or on wheels?
It's typically the definitions that separate your mobile home from your park tunnels. It's all, there's requirements that speak to that movability, the portability for on wheels. The park model homes have their own CSA certifications. That is what most bylaws define. But yes, typically it's really I think council could do whatever it wants, but the real consideration is just that your accessory residential or your additional residential units need to be connected to the same services of the principal dwelling.
So what would be your minimum square footage that you would be allowed for somebody to live in?
So we wouldn't recommend anything in the official plan or the zoning bylaw amendment with respect to minimum dwelling sizes, because that's something that affects affordability directly.
Okay.
The building code has requirements for minimum dwelling size.
And I haven't determined if it's specific to these that limits on a lot or not, but they actually, there is a line, there's a provision in the planning act that says you cannot require a minimum unit size for one of those first three.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. All aimed at affordability, because if you think back 30 years ago, and the exclusionary zoning was you needed in a single detached zone, you needed a lot of a certain size, and the house had to be a certain size, so that probably someone who had the means to build a large house could afford to be in that neighborhood. So it's all trying to break down that barrier by and then the planning work we're doing on new bylaws and the new official plans, we're recommending just the complete elimination of the minimum dwelling size. If somebody wants to live in a small house, so long as it meets the building code, why should council care?
I agree with that.
it might be a bit preemptive, but it'll come up in the zoning, is that the province has actually. They've put language, actually in the same bill that they used to adopt this standardized table of contents. They've put in language that they are, is it minimum lot area cannot be larger than 175, or so they put in saying they're gonna say what the minimum, minimum lot area is, and right now it hasn't passed, but they're pre-consulting on requiring that minimum lot area to be 175 square meters is the minimum lot size.
It's effectively almost trying to do away with minimum lot area.
Yeah.
Again, to allow smaller lots, more affordable housing.
More tiny homes.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to see that's been addressed in garden suites or garden. Cause our last one did stuff that didn't exist. So it's all good. Page 22. Land use compatibility, talks about our sewage treatment plant, it talks about landfill, that kind of stuff where we need certain distance between. Can you elaborate a bit on that one? Because none of these are in the actual town of Mattawa footprint.
Yes.
Our landfills in Pathfinder Cameron,
Yes.
our sewage lagoons are in Mattawa.
Yes, so these are provincial guidelines and provincial requirements for separation distances. They're well established. Just separation distances between industrial facilities like sewage treatment plants, landfills, typically 300 meters. Any or 500 for the landfill.
Yeah.
Typically any development proposal within those thresholds needs to be studied. Needs compatibility assessment, needs an environmental study, and that those separation distances don't stop at the municipal boundary. So just because you have your sewage lagoons are technically outside of town. If somebody does want to propose a dwelling or any sort of development. Within that. Buffer zone, they will still need to adhere to these separation distances, and that's why they would.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the reason I'm asking this is we're in that situation.
Yes.
So that distance is respected from the town line. But not too long ago, there was two new buildings right near it.
Okay.
So, but we don't have a say in yea or nay. This was approved by the township. So what happens in a case like this?
Yeah,
Like it puts us against what we're writing,
yeah.
but it wasn't our decision. Like
Yeah.
how do you juggle that one?
And it's not their official plan either.
No, it's a tough one. If that had gone through a planning process, if that had gone through a planning act application for, say, a rezoning to permit those dwellings in close proximity to the sewage treatment plant, the town would have got notice as a property owner within that notification radius or on the boundary. The town should have gotten notice.
I can tell the town got
and
notice,
you brought
they're
this.
trying to keep their road clean.
And if those were simply building permit applications, then they're, so long as they comply with the provisions of the clear zone bylaw and other applicable law, the building code, for example, then they would have. Those permits would have
Taken over us.
That's right.
Because some of the people that own the property before they were developed, had concerns about the smell, you know, which. I've worked around there, so I don't get it,
Yeah.
but then they build homes
Yeah,
anyway, so
and that's the exact reason why the province says
Say,
yeah.
you shouldn't build within 500 meters of a tree.
But we couldn't have stopped that, because
Yes.
it's not in our municipality, that's, like, is there any way that can be elaborated in there? You know, sure thing, now, we wanna make sure, but some of the, sometimes it's out of our control.
I wonder if you wouldn't have to do a joint submission with townships. To say,
Something,
yeah,
you know, cause it's no different than, some people got a building permit from the town. When the town floods, they have issues, you know, whose fault is it? You know, when the house was built, there was no, official plan. Now there's an official plan that addresses that, but,
yeah,
you know, cause we've learned from them. But, you know, we should learn, we should. Be proactive is what I'm trying to say here.
I appreciate that, and I think, I know we do mention at some points in the plan that the landfill's not in town and.
That's right, you do.
But I think, I think to your point's well taken in this land use compatibility section that's right at the front of the plan. That we should probably make mention there, that's right there, that these facilities are not within the town's boundaries.
Yeah.
But we own it.
And the thing is, that once their life, expectancy is up. We're not gonna build them in Mattawa. We don't have the room. We'll have to find.
That's right,
Another
more
place.
property in the townships,
that's right,
you know.
but I think we can add some sort of preamble language in the introductory paragraph here. Or maybe something along the lines of, you know, we don't have control over what happens in the townships.
Okay.
Worth mentioning also, I know Catherine was just flipping over to the hazards, sketch. Those buffer areas or those separation distance areas are not super impactful within the town. The lagoon buffer comes in and catches that handful of lots,
Catches anything.
nothing.
No, it like touches the boundary, but the landfill is, the 500 from the landfill is slightly in.
Catches a few properties, so.
Yeah. Page 33, infrastructure corridors, I think Councillor Gardner touched up on my questions in that one. With alternative fuels. Looking at then I had page 49 and I gotta get my head back into the source water protection, I've seen this, and then there's mention of salt. Salt, and you know, and that's been a debate for a while, you know, with salt storage, where it goes and what's the future of it, you know, so. am I reading in here that it's we should be phasing salt out?
It's not that the town should be phasing out the use of road salt, it's just there's specific requirements now from the Ministry of the Environment as to where you can locate the salt storage facilities. And they certainly shouldn't be within close proximity or within the wetland protection areas.
Which it is, but,
Right.
but
So it's saying you can't.
everything that melts
Yeah.
goes to the river, right?
Correct.
So it ends up somehow getting there.
And so I'm sure you're aware through the work that Jim's doing, that the town does have to prepare a salt management plan.
Yes,
And I would imagine that part of that would probably be potentially, shouldn't say probably, but potentially less salt. Or looking at other forms of maybe less impactful de-icing products.
so
Salt
it's a
alternatives,
study that's ongoing.
that's right. Beet juice, exactly.
Page 52, right here. Yeah, I think that's when I first started reading, there was two things there, archaeology. So that's tied in directly with the First Nations and the mineral aggregate resource. I remember reading that and I finished it notes, but we have.
That's right.
Yeah, and I've noticed on probably half dozen topics in here, you go on, explain everything, but we don't have one. Okay, so.
But also worth mentioning, mineral, if anything was to be found and extractable nearby. Similarly, you have the separation distances that would need to be considered, say what that separation distance was to coming to this.
Page 57, we're talking about flooding hazards. It's a topic of the day in the town of Mattawa. It's an annual occurrence. I know that the mapping we have, the most recent stuff was done by the Conservation Authority. I'd say maybe 10 years ago. Are we gonna have more updated indication of where the floodplains are? And that would probably be, so that's.
And we do, we are relying on the information from the Conservation Authority, but I think it's newer than.
So the direction that I was given by the Conservation Authority is that the floodplain mapping that exists is as up to date as they have. And it's accurate, I guess, the 2019 flooding, when they measured that, it was approximately at the levels that the flood mapping predicted. So,
Okay. And that's probably when they released all that stuff. I remember going to the
Yeah.
meetings and bringing
yeah,
all their mapping, but we've learned more since, right? So,
I think the challenge is unless the town was to take on its own study of that floodplain. The best information available to us is the mapping from the Conservation Authority.
so my question there, we have residential people in the floodplains, you know, what do you do with that? And is it something that should go in our plan that, once, if they sell, what happens to them?
We do have policy language around that, and that also finds its way to the bylaw and to the idea of legal non-conforming. So
Okay,
houses in the floodplain are legal non-conforming, can continue to be used as such by even subsequent owners, like you wouldn't cut it off with an ownership change, it's the use.
but anything new has to be designed properly.
Anything new, like no new development is prohibited in the floodplain.
Okay.
New development within the floodplain is allowed so long as it's floodproof to a certain elevation.
Yeah,
And really we wouldn't be permitting, or council shouldn't be permitting even expansions of legal non-conforming within the floodplain. So it's,
in that.
everything in the floodplain is more or less frozen in time.
Okay.
and like there is specific, like where an existing building or structure is damaged or destroyed, it may be reconstructed, provided it can meet a number of criteria,
Okay.
including meeting those floodproofing numbers.
Yeah, we're really just trying to ensure that there's no new development in the floodplain at all.
Okay.
And then limited development in the
So
floodplain.
the official plan will protect citizens and the town.
Correct.
Important.
And everyone who has an insurance policy in the province of Ontario, who sees there's like, that's a big part of
Yeah.
provincial direction is to limit development within floodplains on the recognition that storms and flooding are increasingly ruining people's homes and we don't wanna have all these insurance plans with people in the floodplain.
When they put the lines pump up, they had to raise the house 3 feet up
Yeah.
above the water line, so. But non-occupancy, it's a wall,
That's right.
so that's a lot. As long as we meet the standards and the regulation.
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, residential uses are permitted within the flood fringe, but same thing, you gotta be flood proof. You have to demonstrate it with Ontario Land Survey that says, that proves, you have somebody to prove that your floor and your door sill is above that elevation, right?
Page 72, I know it's on the tail end of major facilities, where that's good that it's in there, so our light industrial will be protected. People building around it will be protected, so I like that. And major facilities exception 1, I'm so happy now that this development, our future development, our future growth of our town is gonna be part of the official plan. Cause, you know, we were just talking about a dream before, now, you know, it's a step closer again. And I had some other questions near the end, but they're all on bylaws and that and site control and that, so that's in development, so. That's my questions for now, thank you.
Property standard bylaws
Yes.
for trying to maintain decent properties, neighbors, Is that part of your official plan also, or that just municipal bylaws and control?
That's right, I think we have some language about encouraging.
Respecting.
Respecting,
Yeah, okay.
encouraging, good neighbor policy type
Like
stuff.
say walls, fans.
Yeah.
But your property standards bylaws fall under this plan.
Municipality.
Okay,
So
so
not
not,
the OP, not.
that's your building inspector, okay.
Yeah, see, we can't control that.
Bylaw.
That's right.
And we
Okay.
do have the enabling language in there.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I have one
Yeah.
little quick question that I just thought of.
Sure.
Back in the day, they had no. Uh. Lot plan, so houses were built encroaching on the other people's property.
Site plan, yeah.
So. I know there's a couple of situations in the town where the neighbors didn't get along, so his house was on their property. He built a fence right up against their house. And then come out the front and then down the front of their house, right on his property line. But back in the day, there was no designation, you know what I mean? So do we have something in here that says that, to build that fence is ridiculous, like, right up against the house and then jagged around the front of their property and it looks terrible. But I mean, it's his property too, so.
We do have a municipal bylaw that addresses.
Yeah, you have your fence bylaw, but unfortunately, a situation like that would be an entirely civil matter.
Yeah.
The zoning bylaw that has required side yard setbacks for a reason. But as you said, there are lots of examples everywhere of houses that are built over the property line or eaves troughs that encroach over the property line just because 100 years ago, people didn't quite know where the property line was, and maybe the neighbors got along better than they do now.
And it's legal now.
And it's legal non-conforming, except for the encroachment, I mean, that's not, that could be tested in a court, that, you'd probably have to demonstrate some sort of, with claim or prescriptive easement for that house being there for so long. But yeah, most of those property line disputes are entirely civil matters and not covered by
You're right.
the bylaw.
I had to buy 5 feet from mine next door.
Right.
And that was right on the line,
Yeah,
and he wouldn't let me take my house, so I just bought 5 feet.
yes, that's sort of the amicable solution in most.
Yeah.
That
Wanted the money.
people would encourage.
Councillor Gardner?
Just, I see that you have some mapping and stuff like that here. I
Yes.
don't believe that we got that in the package. I didn't see mapping.
It wasn't, was printed material, but
So
No, I didn't send it, I knew we'd have a chance.
is that something that can be circulated to
Well,
us?
somebody, I suggested to Anthony is that when we're done the question,
We can
we
go.
go over, and rather than each one of us individually, that we could look at the salient points of those maps, there's a few things we need to talk, should talk about.
Yeah, 100%. We can clear these three tables out, we can put sort of the.
Yeah.
Like some of these aren't relevant, aren't applicable, so we can put sort of the top three maps out and we can.
And we can talk you through all of them, it's literally just, the province has told you that you need a map that shows the boundary of the town, and the one map just shows the boundary of the town. So. But yes, we can lay them all out. They just unfortunately were too large to
so,
email.
because we're a quorum here.
Yes.
I can't close the meeting and do that.
Yeah.
So this will be part of the meeting where
After
council can have a
sure.
look at it.
Well, do we wanna just go through the maps and explain them then? I know it's a little extra, but some are a little quicker than others. And.
I mean, I don't think we need to even touch on all of them.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just.
Yes, while we do that, can we offer a couple of comments as well?
Oh,
Yeah.
certainly.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. I don't know, Dex, if you have anything you want to, no, I'm good. All right, a couple housekeeping points. On page 7, the First Nations. You have a list there of
Page
First Nations that are applicable in the area. I don't see Coboac in there. I know they're in Pippewa, but they have an office downtown here. So, not sure what that does and whether we should include them.
Which one is, you talking about the Métis Nation
Have them in case.
or the other one?
Coboac.
Okay.
They're,
Okay.
Pippewa Algonquins, but they have an office here, so.
Yeah.
I just think if we exclude them, we are kind of in your face kind of thing.
And you said page 7?
Oh, sorry,
13.
page 13.
I was gonna say, I see about the 7.
Page 13,
They did say 7.
I did say 7.
I won't tell anybody.
Yeah, so we've done, we took this from the South Algonquin one, this was a ministry modification. But we would definitely add them if it's.
Yeah, we got Charbon Lake, Golden Lake, these are all Algonquins anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
And North Bay Madawaska Algonquins.
Right. Let's go with that. I just, on page 20, we talked about and it's been talked about the garden suites. Now. As it relates to maybe just changing away from garden suites for a minute and thinking of tiny homes. I think the policy statement says we have to provide in the official plan, some area for tiny homes in the town. Is that fact or that
I don't believe so.
I don't know if it specifically calls out tiny homes.
Well, for.
The plan- The planning act requires the garden suites
Right.
inclusion. Yeah,
So we do when we talk about residential uses, we include tiny homes as a listed residential use that is permitted.
Right. And,
And they're not subject to being removed after so many years. Tiny homes are a different
Yes.
animal and they are mentioned in here.
and I think
Yeah.
tiny homes would simply be permitted by virtue of, the minimum dwelling size of the bylaw.
right.
So.
I have a question about that. Can we do lot sizes smaller for tiny homes and increase our access to more lots up there? Like if we have a designated area for tiny homes, then the lot size might be 40 by, what, and now it's 66 by 100 and whatever. So can we shorten or make those lots smaller in our tiny home designated area to accommodate more?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's no minimum.
You could make the tiny home area bigger,
I think that was the intentional,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, if you wanna break,
On 21, is it 21?
21?
When you talk about short-term rental accommodations, I guess Airbnb falls into this category.
Yes.
And so. Right now, what we're saying is that we may allow Airbnbs to have it here. Is that what we're saying?
Right now, I don't think the town has any way to prohibit them or enforce them. What this plan does is gives council the power to implement a bylaw to control them if they want.
Right.
so a certain sector or providing the structure will meet the requirements.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, yeah. Basically, whatever bylaw you so choose to do, would just have to comply with what we put in here. But this is very flexible, basically just says if council wants to regulate Airbnbs, they can do so.
Why would you want to do that?
Some do,
Yeah,
some regulate them pretty strictly.
wow.
I think that would be more of a fire master plan kind of thing, so it's like knowing like the total occupancy.
Okay,
Pre-planning, but
okay.
besides that, but.
And on we talked a fair amount on tree protection, so in here, it says that. We can do that if we so wanted to, and
If it doesn't, put it in.
at the beginning, you talked about approval authority. And so, can you just elaborate on that, exactly what that process is, so once the official plan. Is approved, signed off by the minister or whoever signed it,
Yes.
then is there an application that has to be filed to become, or it just automatically come?
So,
You automatically get it, which
okay,
would be approved.
yeah, and there's language in here now that in this draft plan that says. That the town of Iowa is the approval authority for consents and plans of subdivision. Which effectively, that's right, and so effectively that just becomes. How it is once the MLA is approved.
And based on South Algonquin or whomever, or once the official plan is approved, how long does it take to become the approval authority?
It's that day, you get the email from the MMH that says your plan is approved. Then that's that day, the MMH approval is going to take time, that could take at least a year, if not more.
It depends on.
Or the official plan?
For the official plan itself.
Okay,
Yeah.
We'll come back to timing in a minute, so that's the approval authority, now specifically with municipal land bank number one, where we have to expunge all of the old lots and roads and everything, and create new ones and subdivisions. Other than the legality of getting that registered with the land registry and all that, but we would have the authority to make that happen without having to go to MMH and having. Or, yeah,
That's right, the whole question previously was whether or not we had to go through the subdivision process, and if we did, it was gonna be through administrative. As soon as this plan comes to pass, then yes, the council is or the town is the approval authority for any final subdivision in the land bank.
yes, and so. With timing, it said that not during this council's term, but. Would it be this council? That would approve it, to send it to the ministry. During this term to have it approved, which may take a year, but.
Pre-approval.
they need to post 90 days for
When I-
public meetings.
Well, I was already thinking about whether or not, I think one of the councilors raised the idea that the next council might make changes or might have changes. I was starting to think, and maybe we'll get back to you on whether or not there is some sort of pre-approval. That this council sends to the next one.
Yeah,
So it doesn't back up and take an extra 2 years before you get it implemented.
That's right. I don't know what you're anticipating your turnover is, but maybe that's not a huge concern, but.
I agree, if you can do it
But
in
if
this
there's any-
term, awesome.
Yeah, unfortunately, we won't be able to get it just based on that 90 days, even the 90 days from today, what's this, October 25th, which is after the election.
after the election.
So
That won't happen.
that will happen, but let us give some thought to whether there's some sort of, I'm sure
There's
council.
gotta be some provision.
Well, I'm sure council could just pass a motion to say, we are pleased with this first draft, or this draft.
We
We can't adopt it yet, no.
We approved the first draft.
Yeah.
Unanimously, but till it comes back, they approve it, so.
And just on that note, I think I'm of the opposite mindset that if there is new members at this table that are elected by the people, I think that they have the right to voice their opinion on
Sure.
what happens in this official plan that gets.
They may have other ideas.
You know, the timing, I understand, isn't fantastic. It would have been nice to see this through and have it kind of complete and not carry over multiple terms, but it's what we're kind of dealt with, and you know, I think that the people are gonna vote in who they want in the next election, so I think they should have their opinion to it.
Would agree.
Okay,
Thanks all.
going back to municipal land bank number one, in the current plan. It allows, if approved, we could have septic. Or well, or septic and well, up in parts of Dorian, or all of Dorian.
Correct. Subject to necessary studies,
Yeah.
but yes, absolutely.
On a rock here.
If it goes through, yeah.
If it goes through,
And which we, you know, the pre-consultation with the ministry, they didn't seem to be too concerned about our provision of private service lots. You know, where the circumstances dictate that that's the feasible solution. But the preference would still be for, you know, new development to be connected to municipal services. That's very
I
clearly
agree
stated.
with that. There's areas in the light industrial area that we can't get sewage there.
That's right.
We don't have the elevation,
That's right.
you know, so that'll have to be looked at separately,
Yeah.
but we definitely can provide water.
Right.
You know, especially with a 500,000 gallon system is sitting right there.
Yeah. And we have given the flexibility for the industrial properties within the land bank to be established as on private services. Typically, that would then be reflected in the zoning bylaw, but what we've done in the past and what we've seen elsewhere is that you can permit what you sort of classify as dry industries or low water users can establish in the commercial section of the industrial park on well and septic. If on a case by case basis, if that's what makes the most sense.
The only concern I have with septic tanks up there or septic beds is that there is a water table up there. Because there's water sitting on the surface all the time, it's coming from someplace.
Yeah.
So having a system on top of here as a septic bed, and then we're living down here. And I hate to see what's gonna happen to the groundwater. How far is it gonna go? Is it gonna reach a river? That's another thing, because there's a lot of rock.
So the official plan will give the ability for those lots or the development to happen on private services. But it will have to be studied through hydrogeology to ensure that it's suitable. And it won't have any impacts, long-term impacts.
The idea of growth is to grow our tax base.
Yes.
You know, to maintain the services we now provide. You know, and for more paying into the pot, you know, it should be a lot easier on the people who are carrying the load now.
okay, again, with the municipal land bank number one, and. These are maybe swear words, but as we're thinking development. Future development, and I was trying to figure out in here where it fits, but the concept of development charges. And should the plan allow for that to happen, should we? Cause when we're gonna build. Roads, water and sewer throughout the subdivision. This millions of dollars, let's be honest, and the town just can't afford to just put out millions of dollars, and
Yeah.
that's why development charges came into existence, so you charge the end people or the developers a portion of their, and then so you get some cash up front. I didn't really see that in here per se. I'm not saying I'm a fan of development charges, I'm saying, should the plan allow for them to exist, should the council want it to exist?
So development charges are governed under separate legislation, the Development Charges Act. So I don't believe you need to have enabling language in an official plan in order to use them. But that said, we can certainly make reference to the fact that they may be used. I think there's no harm in putting language to that effect in the plan.
Yeah, I'm a fan of just Cause I can see anything that we do here. You know, think years and years down the road, but if people object or don't object or whatever, but if it's in the plan, at least you got something to fall back into. It says, see, it was approved 20 years ago as a concept.
Sure.
And staying with that, you know, concept of approving, not approving, is there language in here anywhere? I didn't really see it per se, but we can. We always want to promote business, but then we have to be careful that we don't bring in businesses that we don't want. Like for example, you know, whatever, and we don't want maybe a nuclear plant, Dorian Hill, I'm making
Or a
that
big
up.
scrapyard.
Okay, or prison, or some undesirable thing that you say, because if it doesn't disallow it per se. Then, you know, you could be taken to court technically, it says, your plan says you can, or that doesn't say you can't, or whatever, you know what I mean? And is there language you want to put in that allows council to veto anything that it doesn't find desirable?
So we would have to do that through the zoning bylaw.
Only the zoning bylaw, and then you.
Well, we certainly have language in the plan that speaks to. What sort of uses are contemplated, but to your point, you know, that would leave gaps. But the official plan isn't applicable law when it comes to a development proposal, so if somebody came in and said, we wanna build a prison out there. Which would probably be the province and you'd probably have to let them do it, but if somebody wanted to put a scrapyard out there, we would just ensure that the zoning bylaw doesn't permit it. And then, you know, we do have language in the official plan that speaks to the idea that that's gonna be light industry. So you would have that tool as well to say, if somebody submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application to a scrapyard up in Land Bank 1. We'd say, well, it certainly doesn't comply with the official plan because the official plan states that it's classes 1 and 2 industry scrapyard would most certainly be a class 3 facility.
And you could rely on like the land use compatibility policies that say you're not gonna locate noxious or incompatible uses near residential use.
But the best place for that would be a very careful list of permitted uses in the zoning for the land bank area.
And speaking of the zoning bylaw, it'll come after the official plan.
Correct.
And
So, sorry.
I was gonna say, how long does that process take?
So the official plan, we wouldn't be able to adopt the new zoning bylaw. Council wouldn't be able to adopt the new zoning bylaw until the official plan is approved by the province. But we can certainly start on the draft of the zoning bylaw. Have it ready to go.
Yeah.
As soon as.
Yep.
As soon as the province says the OP is adopted, then zoning can go to council for its adoption.
Pertaining to what our official plan gonna allow us
That's
to
right.
do. I mean,
And so we can certainly start to set up the skeleton and we can fill in most of the provisions of the zoning bylaw. There could be tweaks to this plan that require changes to the zoning bylaw, so we wouldn't want to have a final zoning bylaw prepared tomorrow. Because there could be changes, but I think we could probably take a zoning
no,
bylaw
but you can
80%.
amend some of it that doesn't require.
That's right.
So.
Yeah, I think we can have it like more or less ready to go, pending the provincial approval of our plan.
Okay. And just again, specifically with permission to the plan, so, you know, there's been a lot of interest around town around. Creating rental facilities. I don't want to say high rises, but much bigger than are existing today. And I know zoning bylaw is gonna be specific to that, but as a concept. Does the plan right now promote? Those uses throughout, or is there restrictions right now? I didn't really see restrictions on where it can happen.
No, I think it's under condominiums.
Yeah.
Well, even like the residential designation, you know, we haven't put a height limit or anything like that.
Right.
I'm of the opinion that numbers, that numerical limits, like say 4 stories. Is not the place for that isn't the official plan, but that should be zoning, but. You know, if your concern is about seeing buildings that are much taller, and you don't want to see that, we can certainly have language in the plan that says. You know, the residential designation in Mattawa is generally buildings of no more than X stories, or should be no more than X, or I mean, if you want to put a number, you put a number in there. But if you want to see none, it's as flexible as it can be right now.
Right, but the zoning bylaw could restrict.
And the zoning,
Yeah. okay.
Yeah.
Isn't there a part, there's something in here that says that if you're going to put up a building like that in a residential area, you have to consider, the R1, okay, no more R1, so you have the single lots, okay, single houses. They have to take into consideration their site view, say, if it takes away this view of a beautiful water. I think that's in here someplace, I read it, I'm sure.
Yes, you're quite right, that we have policies in there about compatibility and, protection and recognition of those existing uses, so. We would evaluate a planning application if someone wanted to put a high-rise building in an existing two-story neighborhood, it just might not be the right place for it.
So a designated area would be required.
That's right, yeah,
Okay, just a few more.
sure.
And I think I heard this, but just to confirm. So the downtown. We said won't be permitted to have residential on the ground floor.
Correct.
Well, I guess with the exception of those that are there are grandfathered until
Yeah.
they move out. Kind of thing, and then we won't permit,
Well, that use is grandfathered.
right,
So like if a tenant is in there in a residential apartment on Main Street, and they move out, and that unit can stay residential.
well, we can't veto at that point once they move out.
But if it stops being used for a period of time,
Then it loses its legal non.
How long?
I think that's up to the municipality.
that's.
I think that's I think that's been determined sort of by case law, so I can't give you a good number on that, I'd have to do the research on that, but. But yeah, the legal non-conforming status is all
Very well tested.
determined by the courts, right?
So the owner of the building who rents out to a tenant and says, I have a rental operation here, and until I'm done renting,
Yeah,
you can't stop me.
right,
That's
right.
That's a bummer.
And
But
sort of the idea
but
being
if
if that
he
building,
sells, the building,
not even though,
Not
the
even.
use, that use is allowed to stay as a legal non-conforming use, but. If there would be ways to approach it, so if the building burned down, and I shouldn't say burned down, if they wanna rebuild. Then they gotta comply with the new plan and the new zoning bylaw that's gonna say no residential use on the ground floor. If they wanna add to that building and the new zoning bylaw amendment, we'd say you gotta get rid of your ground floor retail. Those sorts of things. So ground floor residential, sorry.
So if they were to come to the municipalities, I'm gonna change my downstairs commercial to residential for now. Is there a way that we could turn around and say for 5 years only, after 5 years, you can come back and reapply? Or we make the decision that we're gonna open it up for commercial?
You can actually do that through a minor variance.
Okay.
So you can't put time limits on the zoning bylaw amendment, but you can put time limits on a minor variance.
Okay.
So if somebody came in and said, I wanna do this for 5 years, you could committee adjustment could put a 5-year time limit on it.
And then
After
after
which they
that,
have to come back. Yeah.
or otherwise we can refuse when they come back and has to go to commercial.
That's right.
Perfect. Okay, there's openings then.
All right, almost there, so. Flood protection. So right now, we talked about floodplain and the flood protection specifically, so like. We build berms, we're getting very good at building berms and digging them up. But in the plan, 10-15 years from now, who knows, there might be different technologies. Maybe it's not a berm, somewhere else, it's some other thing that comes into existence, and. Are we allowed to, as we see fit, the town to erect these structures to promote flood protection?
There is
Yeah,
a part in that,
I believe so, yes, like the provincial planning statement allows construction within a floodplain that is for flood proofing measures. So yes, I mean, it should still be limited structures within that floodplain, but I believe that the municipality would have the ability to do that. At least under the planning act, might run into issues with MNRF. With respect to
Conservation authority.
the conservation authority, I mean,
So if the structure burns within the floodplain. Is there a provision in there in the official plan or bylaws from the municipality that you cannot be built at that level anymore? You have to go into a floodplain situation?
Yeah, staff had mentioned that earlier in situations where a building is destroyed or otherwise. Needs to be replaced, it would have to be further.
And if they don't have the money to do it, then what happens with the property? The municipality takes it back or what?
No, it would just become I guess more or less an undevelopable parcel of land.
Okay.
Those exist.
All right, thank you.
But yeah, so from a planning perspective, you are allowed to build in the floodplain as long as it's for floodproofing measures. You're still not allowed to fill in a floodplain, and so I think building the berm in the floodplain technically constitutes filling, so that's where you run into issues with conservation authority and the it's there's like structural works.
Flood.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's structural works rather than that's building
Oh,
a break wall or building a cement barrier rather than just dumping.
Protection aspect.
That's just rocks.
Rather than dumping. Yeah, I know, that's a bit of a gray area that unfortunately isn't totally planning.
All right, just wrapping up here, so we did talk about minerals a little bit ago, but no matter what's built on rock. What if 10 years down the road they found precious metal in the rocks? Does a special plan allow for that development to happen?
I think it would,
it does,
mineral, what it calls it.
no, it falls under petroleum salt and mineral resources.
Like we essentially in the plan have said that there are none that we're aware of. But I think if anybody was to construct one, they would still have to do all of the studies, they would have to do
Yeah,
all of the required work to justify.
But the plan doesn't prevent it saying we won't allow for development of precious metals or whatever.
There's no prohibition,
Right.
you would still likely need an official plan amendment and zone of amendments.
yeah. Should mineral resources be found within or near the town limits, they should be identified on schedule C3 by way of an official plan amendment.
But no roadblock,
Right.
no barrier if somebody found.
But an amendment is not a big to do per se, but if you found something, if you did find something, we'd say, hey, we found something.
Yeah, I mean, you would still have to do, there's a lot of. Studies and required work that would be you need to be together for the ministry to establish.
Sorry, there's two ways to look at it, is if the province comes and says, hey. We've recently determined there's a mineral resource in the town, that's free.
That's different, yes.
If somebody actually wants to open a mine, that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But
But
I
we-
think exploration works, so like the drilling the holes are. Relatively permitted with mine area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, we can't think here, we gotta think, this is potentially 30 years out, right? So-
Yep.
All right, couple of questions and that's it. Compliance with all the legislation, as far as you know, this draft is fully compliant.
This draft is fully compliant with the current planning act and consistent with the provincial planning statement.
Okay, and if I was to ask you your honest thoughts on what are the 2 or 3 risk areas that we face with the MMH when they review this, where do you think we're maybe a little bit vulnerable?
I think there is a little bit of vulnerability on the land bank in terms of private services.
Land bank number 1?
Yes,
When you say private services,
well, what's that?
okay, I wondered that.
Yeah, so the planning act, or sorry, the provincial planning statement. Provides for private services. In situations that it deems to be minor rounding out. Which is essentially to be used in limited situations, it doesn't anticipate, it doesn't necessarily say you can't, but it doesn't anticipate using private services. For large scale municipal expansion, so. I think we have a policy in there that says that the goal is that it will eventually be, and the goal is that it's. Most of it is to be serviced by full municipal services. I think there's a little bit of vulnerability there.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know. Is there anything else?
One question,
Sure.
amalgamation, if we were to amalgamate one of the surrounding township. And this official plan, would that automatically would apply to the land that we are amalgamating, taking over, or do you have to make an amendment to add that in?
I think you would be doing an amendment, bring it in.
I put language in here. Any expansion of the settlement area boundaries, the town boundary, and therefore the municipal boundary, would require the annexation of lands. Should an alteration the boundary of the settlement area ever be proposed, expansion. Oh, no, never mind, but yes, it would have to go and it would have to be updated.
And no,
I think, Paul, to your question about sort of a couple other vulnerabilities that do come to mind, just looking at my hit list of the key areas. We have tried to be somewhat flexible and soft on our language for environmental impact studies. Using terms like should be required or generally will be required under certain circumstances. There's a possibility that the province puts in stricter language to say where these things are required.
yeah,
You must. I think there's a few areas in the environmental section where we're not that we're trying to downplay the environmental significance, but we're just trying to give ourselves the flexibility to use sound planning judgment. So say based on the scale of the development. You know, if it's a small development that happens to be in close proximity to a wetland, and we want to have some flexibility with respect to how detailed that environmental impact study has to be. You know, we recognize that environmental impact studies or archaeological assessments, for example, can be perceived as barriers to development. So we just want to have some flexibility with respect to the scope of those studies. So there's, I think a little bit of vulnerability, as Councillor Ross said about, you know, the province might change some of our shoulds and generals to shall and will. But I think those are top three are going to be in that archaeology, environmental impact study, and private services policies.
Okay, and on that. Do we, if they kick it back for modification or proposed modification, do we get a say in?
No.
course not. That's a short answer.
Well, the last correspondence we've had with the province, however, is that in providing this draft to them, that they will review it, and we've been told that they will provide feedback.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what that feedback's gonna look like.
Mandatory feedback.
Mandatory feedback.
Yeah.
But if council passes the new official plan and it's forwarded on to the ministry for adoption, like that's the end of the road. And then whatever comes back from the ministry with its list of modifications, there's no debate. No room for, we can always meet with them and get feedback on why they did what they did.
Right.
But when they issue the ministerial approval with modifications, that's what you gotta move forward with.
Well, I want to say thank you to you guys for the work you've done on this. It's a lot of work, and I think we have a good document. Council has no other questions. Maybe we can take a turn and look at the maps if that's okay.
Or I can even just do a real quick summary of the ones that I think we should focus on.
I can list. Well, I'll just tell them what they are. Yeah, so they're.
I think we should go around.
Yeah.
go ahead.
We should go down the boards now.
Yeah, so the first one. It's the very light map.
Territory.
It's the settlement area boundary, so it's. In places where you have rural land and urban land, it would maybe be a little bit more populated, but it's the boundary essentially. So. And again, it's so schedule A2 is meant to be identifying lands that are the focus for accommodating growth. And I don't think we didn't decide to specify anything specifically. You know, the entire area is intended for intensification, growth, infilling, all that kind of stuff. we did identify specifically the municipal land bank areas. They can't, so you'll see, in reviewing this, you'll see the word strategic growth areas. We couldn't count them as strategic growth areas because greenfield development, so completely untouched land, does not count as a strategic growth area. Yeah, it's defined in the central planning statement, and because greenfield doesn't count, we couldn't call them strategic growth areas.
Before you move on from this one, is there any crown land attached to our boundary anywhere?
Now you're the Pepin Gander over here is the crown land, I don't know, is it all right?
Off the top of my head, I do not know, but we can look at that.
Because if that's the case, will we be able to ask the province that the town needs to expand and we could allow that crown land to be given to us?
Good luck.
Yeah.
Another one's right then.
Yeah, the province will sell ground land at fair market value.
Oh, okay.
It's a Mattawan Drive, and it's a crazy price. So,
Really?
yeah. So, anyway, but I don't even know if that's ground, so I don't.
So this will be the main map, this is the land use designations. So yeah, the yellow it's now called neighborhoods, it's what you would traditionally know as your residential designation. Oh, and you'll see the little dots identify that it's an exception zone, so the two land banks are the exception zones. The mixed use areas is what you would typically know as your commercial. So you can see there's a couple properties here along the highway that are just residential, left as residential. This also kind of follows the existing official plan, so I believe a lot of the existing official plan, the highway was designated a highway commercial. We don't have anything designated that mixed use commercial areas, that's the one that's it allows for mixed uses except for sensitive land uses. Another big one you might see in the list is that there's a major facilities designation and an employment areas. We have not designated anything employment areas because the province, that is a defined term for the province. And it allows a very, very limited scope. It only allows manufacturing essentially. So the major facilities would allow the manufacturing as well as other industrial uses, which is why we stuck with that to give more flexibility to the land bank and what's currently the Legere site. And our green is our parks open space, with the darker green being the it's called natural environment and water resources area, but it is what would have traditionally been known as your environmental protection.
So no building.
Yes. Again, we kind of kept it limited to what was owned by hydro or the town. We tried not to designate people's properties as environmental protection.
So if you're within this area now, you would be legal non-conforming, that building goes, you can never rebuild it.
Well, if it was to be destroyed, you could rebuild like immediately.
You rebuild exactly what's there.
Yes. And so there is also flexibility in the official plan that says you can, through a zoning bylaw, if something like up here where there's slope issues, if you get a geotechnical study done to prove that the hazard's not there or the hazard can be mitigated, you could still, there is flexibility to the plan. It's meant to highlight the key areas where there's environmental concerns.
This is along the cemetery up here?
So the cemetery is here.
But worth mentioning too that green up there on the hill there.
Yeah.
That was an official plan amendment to the previous plan that we've just carried forward. And it's steep slopes, recognizing that those properties are probably not very easily developable.
And
But can be developed.
most of it is owned by the town.
Yes. So as Catherine said,
It goes up to the reservoir back there.
yeah, as Catherine said, a sort of key part of this exercise is to limit the amount of constraint replacing on existing property owners or
In
limiting.
other words,
the
you can
changes.
just hang on to it.
I would say so, yeah. We're trying to ensure that we're not making too many changes to private properties through the section size, or that we're not down zoning private properties. If anything, we're giving people more permissions than they ever had.
Catherine,
Yes.
just maybe a slight edit to this.
Yes,
Mark it up, mark it up.
Parks and open spaces, right?
yeah,
So this is Timmins Park, I think.
yes,
The full park would be like over here.
Okay.
Yeah, so we brought Sharpies if anybody has. If anybody wants to mark it up, we'd be more than happy to
Over here, I think.
take your edits.
It might even be that level.
This is great feedback, like if you see road names that are spelled wrong, blame CGIS, not us.
we did already fix the rate.
Yeah, we fixed a couple that we knew, but.
So I live right here, what is that?
You're green, you're a natural environment and water resource.
I'm sure you live in there, not there.
Oh, the water came right up in my.
Now, you live here, this is where
Oh, I-
that Riverview restaurant.
Yeah, right here, true, but that's another lot right there.
So one of them's owned by Lime. I did,
This is I go right here,
okay,
Yeah.
that little lot.
So you,
I will.
So this is, yeah, you're right, Matt, that is where we are, we sure.
what's your municipal address? What's your 911?
655.
655, and then we'll check that
Yeah,
out.
that's right.
But if you could be in there in the floodplain, and it's just one.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, well,
So one of my questions was like the ones that are gonna be impacted by this, for example, right here is the Lions Club.
yeah,
Like, if we're gonna have consultation, I hope that we're gonna reach out to them, not just say that, hey, you can come to a public meeting, but I hope that we reach out to them and say, hey, these are the implications of what we're changing, and you're affected by this.
But when they put it there, they had to meet the environmental requirements, which they had to raise at 3.5 feet, and that's what they did. So when they had the big flood, the water just came that far from the floor underneath. Because it sits up on top, and they got outlets there underneath.
Right now, green means no building,
that's right.
so they're not building again.
Yeah, but that's pre-existing.
Yeah,
Yes,
yes,
no,
no,
the building's okay as long as the building stays the way it is.
Yes.
But they can't add on to it, they don't put an addition, they can't.
No, but they can build on the same footprint, right? You go up,
And
go up higher on the same footprint.
no, you can't add any additional space. You can build exactly non-livable.
You cannot have a residential in there.
That's right.
Actually, I'd say I think the flexibility is there in the environmental protection, it's not there in the
It's a
flood.
floodplain.
Yeah, which unfortunately that wouldn't change so we can definitely take them out, but they would still be subject to the flood policies.
It's like this guy that wants to build condos. Okay, and he owns that piece of land there.
Yeah.
He's in deep doo-doos because unless he builds high enough that the bottom is all garage. And then you got apartments on top, but I don't think they will allow it.
He's got a big chunk of that property that's in the floodplain.
Yes.
He can't build on.
There you go. It's perfect.
Perfect.
Not perfect, no.
Yeah, no.
So this shoreline areas is. Again, it's one of these new defined designations by the province. It's intended, it allows recreational uses, residential uses, and marine uses. So it's kind of meant to be your like waterfront, recreational.
But that belongs to hydro law here.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
the
sorry.
town,
I just the dark green.
yeah, and the town
Well,
law.
this is hydro.
She's talking about the light.
Okay, the hydro.
Yeah. Yeah, so and same as the we put the marina because it's marina. And again, we designated Turcotte Park as that for recreational use.
Sure.
And a couple problems down there as well.
Well, the town owns along the shore here. See, it's not something. Yeah, the town owns from Champlain Street down to where the church is,
Yeah.
down to that corner.
And it's
Where
probably,
we're liable if somebody gets hurt on that property.
It's probably not colored because it's likely not a separate parcel, it's like part of the right of way. I think. We can look at that,
We can look that.
but if there's a parcel down there that we missed coloring, then yeah, we'll look into that.
We have this map, Sherry, I know that we're looking at it, but like I really wanna look at individual properties that.
Yes. We
Kind of
actually,
like copies.
we did get two copies of this one printed, so you guys can keep a copy of
And I
this.
think, was there not a set up?
Yes.
Well, this is
Couple
it.
weeks ago? Oh, that's it.
Oh.
That's it, this is it.
Okay, well, that's yours.
We have another set as
Well,
well.
we'll replace it, yeah, let's move
It's
it.
just weren't easily shareable to everybody, right? So I know we have it today and look at it, so.
Yeah.
Two balls.
Well, anyone else have any comments right now?
Anything else on this? That's it, like, that's what I wanted people to see, was this one, right?
That's the main one,
Yeah.
and then maybe the hazards is the other next, most
Well-
important one,
Well,
or the.
so yeah, this is pretty straightforward. This is just your roads as well as all your active transportation. This comes directly from the asset management. This is just the infrastructure, sewer and water. We showed the proposed reservoir. Yeah. This is, it's public service facilities, parks and open space, so you know, we've identified the schools, the hospital, the parks, the arena.
So again, yeah.
The other part.
Yeah.
We'll work on there, you know? Part. Bringing down a bulk deal. Yeah, all good. You guys good with that?
And again, you guys, we'll leave you a copy, so if you guys want to look at them in detail. So this is the natural environment, so the only things that show up, and so these are from the ministry. There's fish spawning habitat here, which is what this,
Hospital
Dots.
big.
yeah,
That's what they call it, yeah.
Yeah.
and then there's some deer yard. Which it just affects this top little corner there, so,
Yeah, Murphy's Road.
yeah. This is the source water protection, so it just shows where your source water protection zones are.
Then the social protection zones. There's varying different things that are permitted within each of those colors.
And yeah, these translate into the official plan.
Okay.
And that was introduced by way of an official plan amendment to the previous plan, which we simply carried forward.
Yes,
Should this one include, or would we just change it? We're talking about a well, Mondorian,
New reservoir.
new reservoir, we're talking about potentially a well up there as well, right?
Potentially, well, although there's been talk about having it
Located.
Right there.
right here, right?
Right there. Right there.
Yeah.
Over here.
so this map is supposed to include water resource systems and vulnerable areas for protection of drinking water. So we did identify the reservoir on the infrastructure count.
So our artesian well, which is here, right?
Yeah.
Are we gonna supply that water up to those on top where the reservoir is gonna be? From there?
Where the water, that's where the water's gonna go.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
thanks.
okay, I would,
No, we absolutely got that. We don't want it.
I saw that last night.
Yeah,
What's right, well, this is.
Oh, and then we also,
There's one that I got,
oh yes, because we don't, so. You'll notice there's a list of 10 maps, we only have 9 because there is no resource potential, so because there's no resource potential, we didn't get a map with nothing on
I
it.
said no older.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
but you sound like you knew about something when you were saying if somebody established a mine here.
Yeah, I just wanted to see what you
Not saying, so then this is the hazard area, so this is probably one of the most populated maps. Little squares are called wildland fire hazard. So what has happened is the province has used aerial imagery and they have assigned a score based on the hazard that the trees in that square have of protection fire. Okay, So pine trees obviously have a higher,
Then should see what that all looks like.
yeah,
I bet,
so effectively,
right, see that.
The island catch on fire, they're going very far.
Yeah. This is the one, yeah.
So Jericho's Park is here then, right?
yeah,
Oh, no, sorry, the one is just in here.
Yeah,
yeah.
So this is kind of what.
That's where the company lives up on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, they cut a lot of those trees out already, but he's planning to put some housing there and then building a hotel back here.
So where, there's a bunch of trees that are close to a clump and a clump. I guess they're got, are here.
It has been, so have to show this.
Housing.
Yeah.
We have to show this, but effectively the way we started the policy is that it's going to be reviewed on a site specific basis.
Or one.
How was that me?
You're being paid.
No.
yeah.
You'll do kind of, site specific assessment again, where you're in a residential area. If you're gonna take down the trees, you kind of reducing the risk.
Right.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and then we've also shown the landfill with the landfill with the 500.
Yeah.
Sewage plant with the 500, and then this is the one we also have the flood plan on.
Right.
So the dark blue is the flood way. And
That no building below that.
yeah, and then the blue dash is the flood fringe, if you can build, if you build to a certain height.
Yep, yeah, there's certain criteria.
Yes.
Right.
This is the one, Matt, you want.
Yeah, see,
Got all the streets
And
and
then-
then,
so we're talking the other day, like,
Yeah, that one looks funny on paper.
yeah, and then not only that, but then that's what a basement is. And then.
He's actually here. He's actually right.
Another point.
So I gotta,
Yeah, I'll go with it. There it is. It's-
Okay, I gotta get
it's a
moved.
target.
I got longer than the
Oh, yeah, it's the lowest, this is
Yeah.
lower than the river.
Yeah, that's wild.
Did you wanna look at that?
Yeah, I'll come and see them, that's not,
Well, that's-
I'll come see them here when we have time, yeah.
Clean copy for you, keep it.
Yeah.
What is the big copy?
Yeah, well, keep these ones with the notes.
So you guys have anything to,
Well, I just in closing, I thank you all very much for your review, and that was a lot of really thoughtful comments. And we will take that all back with us, and what we'll do is we'll take this draft. We'll prepare a red line to it, so and we'll share that with council, so you can see where we've made the changes that we've heard from you today. And then if there is further feedback, to the plan itself, if you want to pass that through Paul on to us, then we'd be more than happy to accommodate all of that. Any comments, as I mentioned, street names that are incorrect, property fabric that looks wrong, any other parks or anything like that, anything else we missed, please pass that along to us. We'll get a red line vision on.
This will get
so I'm
involved.
gonna ask council now, give them a last chance to ask questions, so anybody have your final questions, this is the time.
This is the.
So we'll start at the end, anything from Spencer?
With the concern for land bank one, is there a way, so as an example, there is other areas in Ottawa where there's privates like with wells. And I know that they have amazing fluoride levels, and like that the water is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Is there any studies that we can do now that would I guess be advantageous for us to be like, hey, like this area can support these new builds or like the larger densities like that you were talking about that are harder to get.
I mean, aside from doing a sort of town-wide hydrogeological analysis of groundwater well capabilities, I would probably just suggest that the official plan doesn't preclude anybody from building on a well or a septic, provided they can demonstrate through a study that they're not going to impact any other neighboring properties in the long term.
Nope. Ross, Councilor Levite?
You're gonna revise this, right?
That's right.
And then you say about a year?
So we will revise it, we'll send it back to council, get it back to council.
For final approval?
That's right.
And then you send it to the ministry.
and we sent it to the ministry. So I would suggest my anticipation for a council adoption of this, provided there isn't a wholesale rework from new council, is the adoption probably in January of 2027. Then forwarded onto the ministry, and then it's probably about a year.
So the ministry can do some amendments on this too, right?
Correct.
So providing there's not too many, then to rewrite it all over again for them,
Yeah.
that means we have a date for 1 year. You say?
I'm gonna say it's gonna be at least a year
Okay,
for ministerial approval.
awesome, thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
None.
Councillor Tiber.
None.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation and look forward to seeing it become an adopted document for the town of Madawaska. So we'll bring us back into the meeting. There are no notice of motions. There are no information reports. We're not going in camera. And I think it's time to adjourn, so I need a mover and a seconder.
Thank you for your time. Safe trip back home.
Thank you for your time as well. Oh, we're gonna have lunch first.
Oh. You're buying, you said?
So I have a motion here moved by Councillor Bigelow, seconded by Councillor Ross. Be it resolved that this regular meeting adjourn at 12:26 p.m. Questions, comments? Councillor Gardner.
Yeah, just in regards to the minutes, are we just going to update the minutes to reflect that it wasn't Mr. Hatton that was here presenting today, that we acknowledged the ones that were with?
Clerk indicated yes. Any other? No? Okay, so I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Carry.